Some boats were never built to win trophies or carry families on weekend trips. They were built to carry contraband across open water at speeds the Coast Guard could only watch on radar. From dark-painted Italian smugglers running cigarettes across the Mediterranean to autonomous Narco submarines guided by Starlink, these are 15 of the fastest, smartest, hardest-to-catch smuggling boats ever built. A few of them were faster than the patrol craft chasing them. The first one set the entire blueprint, 10 to 15 meters long. Wooden hull, painted the exact dark blue that disappears into the Mediterranean at night. No name on the side, no registration anyone intended to honor. These were the Scafi Blu, the best smuggling boats the Mediterranean ever produced, in a market with more competition than the average tourist would imagine. Each boat ran a pilot and 2 crew, carrying 500 to 1,000 cartons of contraband American cigarettes from Montenegro, the Middle East, and North Africa. The boats made 40 knots. The Guardia di Finanza ran slower vessels. Wooden construction handled the radar return. Dark paint handled the visual detection. 40 knots handled the pursuit. Motherships anchored between 10 and 20 nautical miles offshore in international waters, and the boats ran out, loaded up, and slipped back to hidden coves along the Campanian coast. When cigarette margins fell in the early 1980s, the Camorra loaded the same hulls with cocaine and rang Colombia. These Italian smuggling pioneers plotted the charts for some much bigger operations on the other side of the Atlantic. Don Arano was trying to win offshore races. He accidentally invented the most successful drug smuggling boat in the history of the United States Coast Guard, which is the kind of accident only Florida can produce. The Cigarette 38 is a deep V monohull, long, narrow, twin big block engines, and a ride early testers described as virtually uncontrollable in rough water. That was a feature, not a complaint. Arano built the boat on Northeast 188th Street in North Miami, known forever as Thunderboat Row. His client list included President Lyndon Johnson, Vice President Bush, and a rotating roster of South Florida cocaine importers who noticed that a hull built to beat racers was equally good at beating the Coast Guard. The Bahamas sit 90 nautical miles from Florida. The Cigarette 38 covers it in under an hour. Same boat won races on Saturday and ran product on Tuesday. Allegedly, sometimes the same driver. Now over to South Florida, where Don Arano's lighter and shorter. Shorter and lighter than the 38, the Top Gun gets onto plane faster and accelerates harder, at the cost of some top-end stability when the weather turns. Twin engines, close to 70 knots in open water, and a profile so common in South Florida during the 1980s that it functioned as camouflage entirely by accident. When every marina has 3 cigarette hulls at the fuel dock and every driver is wearing the same sunglasses, surveillance becomes a mathematics problem. You cannot watch all of them. Willie Falcon and Sal Magluta, known as Los Muchachos, understood this perfectly. Their racing teams competed nationally. Magluta sat on the American Powerboat Association's competition commission. Their boats appeared on ESPN. 75 tons of cocaine over 13 years, an estimated $2 billion. The strategy was to be so visible that suspicion looked like paranoia. When they were finally arrested in 1991, the approach had not failed. The timeline had simply caught up. So one Arano customer ran cocaine in plain sight. Another ran it harder, faster, in Kevlar, 2 doors down. The Apache 41 is a 41-foot Kevlar-reinforced deep V monohull built by Bobby Secenti on Thunderboat Row, 2 doors down from Arano. In race trim, it ran twin supercharged 572 cubic inch V8s, 1,000 horsepower each. At the 1984 APBA World Championship in Key West, in 20-knot winds and 10-foot seas, the Warpath pulled away at over 75 knots and crossed the line with 9 minutes of fuel remaining. Ben Kramer drove the Warpath and co-owned Apache powerboats. He also owned Fort Apache Marina on the same street, complete with a secret helicopter hangar and structural compartments unrelated to boat storage. Prosecutors convicted him of importing roughly £500,000 of marijuana. He later pleaded no contest to arranging the murder of Don Arano himself. He went from the winner's podium to a federal cell with the gold paint still wet. The boats kept running. There is never a shortage of people willing to drive. Now from a builder who quietly ran drugs to a brand brand whose drug-running reputation was advertised on primetime television. 37 feet 6 inches long, 8-foot beam, twin 440 horsepower Mercury Mercruiser FUF 8 inboards, top speed around 52 knots. Kevlar laminate in the layup, the same construction approach Betty Cook used to win offshore racing championships on scarab-derived hulls. Then it appeared in Miami Vice. From Season 2 onwards, Wellcraft's orders jumped over 20%, and the company produced 33 Miami Vice Edition units at $130,000 each. That price tag tells you everything about the era. By the mid-1980s, the 38 kilovolts was everywhere in South Florida. Doctors had them, lawyers had them, dentists with unusually busy weekends had them, cocaine traffickers had them. They all turned up at the same fuel docks in the same sunglasses, nodding politely like neighbors at a barbecue. A hull that common does not need stealth, it needs numbers. When surveillance has to choose between hundreds of identical boats, it cannot watch all of them. The Scarab did not hide, it just became part of a crowd, which produces the same operational result. The Blue Thunder is a 39-foot catamaran designed by Don Arano himself for the United States Customs Service to intercept the cigarette-class hulls that had been outrunning government boats for 10 years. Wider stance, more stability at speed, flatter ride in rough water. Top speed exceeded 60 knots offshore. Vice President George H.W. Bush flew to Miami to test one personally. The boat was excellent. That part of the story actually went fine. The problem arrived when Arano sold the production contract and the company holding it to Ben Kramer. The same Ben Kramer who at that exact moment was one of the largest marijuana importers in American history. United States Customs briefly found itself in the awkward position of having its drug interception program managed by one of the largest drug importers in the country, which is the kind of conflict of interest that does not usually survive a routine background check. The sale was eventually voided. The contract returned to Arano. Arano was subsequently shot dead outside his office on Thunderboat Row. Kramer hired the gunman. History occasionally writes its own punchlines, and this one wrote itself in legible font. So the cartels answered the same problem from the other side, with no name, no brand, no identity. Not all of them had names. The effective ones did not bother. The Colombian cartel Go Fast followed a simple specification. Fiberglass hull, 25 to 40 feet long, twin or triple large displacement outboards, no markings of any kind. Speeds ran to 56 knots or better in moderate conditions. Range was extended with extra fuel bladders strapped into the cockpit. The entire vessel was designed to be replaced without sentiment. Motherships anchored just outside jurisdictional reach. Go Fasts would meet them, take on the cargo, and run for the Florida coast. 90 nautical miles in under 90 minutes. The Coast Guard radar saw the contact every time. Catching it required something that did not yet exist in government inventory. A seized boat was a line item in the operating budget, like office rent. The route was the asset. The boat was disposable packaging, and the cartels were clearing enough per run to replace one several times over without the maths becoming uncomfortable. Now the law enforcement answer was eventually to use the smugglers' own hull geometry against them, built for one job. The Midnight Express 39 Interceptor is a deep V monohull designed specifically to catch go-fast boats, which means it uses the same hull geometry, the same performance logic, and the same offshore racing DNA that the smugglers had been running for 2 decades. The design conversation had gone all the way around the circle. The hull shapes pioneered for moving product were now being refined by some of the same builders for stopping it. Long range, high speed in rough water, stable enough to board a vessel at sea without putting the boarding crew into the ocean. At 39 feet, it could stay offshore through a full interdiction operation without turning back for fuel. Operators stopped talking about top speed and started talking about outcomes. Runs that once felt untouchable were ending differently. The psychology of the go-fast world shifted. If fast no longer guaranteed escape, Going faster was no longer the answer. The cartels needed a different variable, and they chose visibility, or rather the absence of it. So once the interceptors caught up on speed, the cartels stopped running faster and started disappearing from radar. The low-profile vessel is a go-fast hull with an additional shell built around it, reducing the freeboard, which is the height above the waterline, to almost nothing. Where a standard go-fast sits a meter or more above the surface, the LPV sits so close to the water that its radar return is nearly indistinguishable from wave clutter. It is not invisible. It is just very easy to mistake for ocean noise, the way a whisper sits inside a crowded room. In practice, on a busy patrol watch, that produces exactly the same result as invisibility. Built in workshops on Colombia's Pacific coast, in jungle locations, with improvised materials and functional rather than elegant construction. Cargo capacity around a ton. Range up to 435 nautical miles of open Pacific. Speed was secondary. The requirement was not to outrun the patrol boats, but to not appear on their screens at all. It worked until air surveillance improved enough that what surface radar missed, fixed-wing aircraft could still see from above, at which point the next step was obvious. Go deeper than aircraft can look. Now the story stops being a boat story and becomes a submarine story, hand-built in a Colombian jungle. Not a true submarine. It cannot fully dive. What it can do is run so low in the water that only the cockpit, air intake and exhaust stay above the surface, and its radar return is practically indistinguishable from wave noise. Fiberglass hull, 15 to 25 meters long, diesel engine with exhaust systems tuned to reduce the infrared signature thermal cameras detect. Built in clandestine shipyards on Colombia's Pacific coast, under jungle canopy that blocked overhead surveillance, with river access to the open ocean. The first confirmed seizure was in 1993. For years afterward, law enforcement insisted these vessels were a rumor. By 2009, US analysts were counting roughly 60 semi-submersible events per year, moving an estimated 330 metric tons of cocaine annually. The Coast Guard estimated they were intercepting 1 in 10. Each hull cost up to $2 million. The cargo made that figure a rounding error. Analysts eventually identified individual builders by subtle quirks in the fiberglass layup, like signatures on a painting. These were not improvised solutions. They were an organized engineering program run out of jungle workshops with a clearer production schedule than most legal shipyards. So for years, they were dismissed as rumor. Then one was caught intact, and the legend got a hull number. For the better part of a decade, reports of Narco semi-submersibles were filed, circulated, and quietly dismissed as exaggeration. The DEA started calling them Bigfoots, on the grounds that everyone had a story about one and nobody could put one on a table. Then, in 2006, the United States Coast Guard intercepted one in the Eastern Pacific, and the nickname stopped being funny. 70 feet long, fiberglass, 8 tons of cargo capacity, built in a jungle by people who had worked out the structural engineering through necessity rather than formal training. The vessel was recovered intact, the first time analysts could take one apart and see how it actually worked. The answer was better than expected, which was not the answer anyone wanted. What the Bigfoot confirmed was that the cartels were not modifying existing boats. They were designing and building entirely new vessel types from scratch in locations with no supply chain, and doing it well enough to cross thousands of nautical miles of open ocean reliably. Law enforcement had been slow to believe this. It had been happening for years. Now, the most elegant smuggling system of all is not even a boat. It is a sealed container towed underwater. Not a boat at all. A sealed, neutrally buoyant cargo container, torpedo-shaped, towed at depth by an ordinary fishing vessel. A ballast tank holds it at around 30 meters below the surface, while the towboat runs on the surface, looking exactly like every other fishing boat in the area. If a patrol approaches, the tow line is released and the torpedo sinks. It carries a GPS beacon hidden inside a floating wooden log on a timer. When the coast is clear, the log surfaces, transmits coordinates, and a second ordinary-looking fishing boat retrieves the cargo. 3 vessels that look exactly like fishing boats. A log. $2 million of cocaine running 30 meters below the surface between them. No purpose-built hull. No infrared signature. No radar return. The simplicity is the sophistication. Law enforcement improved acoustic detection. The cartels built quieter tow motors. Sensors got more sensitive. The containers ran deeper and slower. The arms race migrated 30 meters below the surface. The torpedo system is still in active use. There is just nothing dramatic to photograph when it works correctly, which is the entire point. So while the Atlantic went quiet, the Pacific went the other way and built a real submarine in a swamp. On July 3, 2010, Ecuadorian authorities found a submarine in a remote swamp near the Colombian border. 31 meters long, diesel-electric, cylindrical fiberglass and Kevlar hull, a 3-meter conning tower with a working periscope, air conditioning, capacity for 10 tons of cargo and a crew of 5 or 6. It could fully submerge to 20 meters. The DEA's Andean Regional Director called it the first fully functional, completely submersible submarine for transoceanic voyages ever found, which is not a category most people expect drug smugglers to be competing in. Every component had been brought in by canoe-like boats, several pieces at a time, over more than a year, into an area so remote the builders had no access to mains electricity. They built a working submarine without mains electricity in a jungle, on a 1-year construction schedule, which is faster than most US Navy refits. The boat was found before it ever made a voyage. A near-identical vessel, also 31 meters, also Kevlar and fiberglass, was seized by the Colombian Navy in Timbiqui 7 months later. The jungle had an uninterrupted production schedule and apparently no shortage of storage. Now, from a sub built in a swamp to a sub that crossed nearly an entire ocean. In November 2024, during Operation Orion, a 62-country counter-narcotics mission, a semi-submersible was intercepted 2,000 kilometers southwest of Clipperton Island in the open Pacific. 5 tons of cocaine on board. Destination? Australia. Enough fuel for the full 16,000-kilometer journey without stopping. The hull is the same low-profile fiberglass semi-submersible the Pacific route has been running for 2 decades. What changed is the distance. Colombian Navy Vice Admiral Orlando Grisales confirmed it was the 3rd such vessel intercepted on this specific Australia route, meaning the first 2 had completed the journey. Australian street price for cocaine reaches $240,000 per kilogram, roughly 6 times the United States rate. A 5-ton load arrives worth over $1 billion. The hull costs a few $100,000 to build. That gap in the numbers explains the entire engineering ambition. The Scafi Blu crossed 20 nautical miles of Mediterranean water in the dark and called it a night's work. This one crossed an entire ocean and very nearly arrived in time for breakfast. So all of that brings us to the vessel that finally removed the last weak link in the system. On July 2, 2025, the Colombian Navy stopped a semi-submersible off the Caribbean coast near Santa Marta, 15 meters long, gray-coated for low visibility. 2 cameras, 2 antennas, 1 a Starlink modem, rated for 1.5 tons of cocaine, 695 nautical mile range, empty, no crew. The vessel was running autonomously under remote control, operated from somewhere with a satellite connection, which is a description that applies to most of the world's surface area. Admiral Juan Ricardo Rozo confirmed it as the first unmanned narco submarine ever intercepted in South American waters. Sources believed it was a Clan del Golfo test run. Every interdiction strategy built around arresting crews stops working when there is no crew. The vessel loses nothing that can talk. The Starlink modem meant the operator could be anywhere on Earth, including the family kitchen table. So that was 70 years of smuggling boats, from wooden Mediterranean runners to autonomous Colombian drone subs guided by Starlink satellites. If you liked this video, subscribe and make sure to check out a similar video on the fastest smuggling boats ever built to outrun the law. We will see you there.